Welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
So today we're embarking on a deep dive that sits right at the intersection of, well, history, culture, and just pure artistic commitment.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to use one extraordinary figure as our lens. You'll almost certainly know him globally, probably as Pablo Escobar from Netflix's Narcos.
Oh, absolutely. A performance that just dominated television.
It really did.
But Wagner Moura is so much more than that one breakthrough role.
Yeah.
We're looking at an artist whose deepest impact really lies in using cinema not just as entertainment,
Right.
but as a critical tool for preserving what some scholars call civic memory.
Mm-hmm.
His whole career, especially his work in Brazil, is just fundamentally tied up with political consciousness.
And that's our mission for today. We want to extract the nuggets that explain this. I mean, how does Moura take these hard historical facts, which are often painful, often buried by official stories, and turn them into these incredibly resonant emotional narratives?
Yeah, how does he do it?
And how does his work become this sort of living archive of Brazilian culture? What are the techniques that make him so powerful, both at home in Brazil and, on the world stage?
Well, the sources really paint a picture of an artist who is consciously trying to bridge that gap.
Yeah.
Between pop culture entertainment and serious social commentary.
Okay.
So we're going to trace that artistic evolution. We'll start with his commitment to truth, then define this powerful idea of cinema as civic memory, and then dig into the cultural impact of his most challenging films.
Okay, let's unpack that, starting with his foundation. He was born in Salvador, Bahia in 1976.
Mm-hmm.
And I think most people don't realize he actually started off studying journalism.
That's right, before he pivoted to theater.
Exactly, at the Federal University of Bahia. And that early interest in, investigation and research, it really feels like the bedrock for the kind of commitment he brings to his roles later on.
It absolutely sets the stage. That investigative impulse really informed his acting. He's not just inhabiting a character. Yeah. He's researching and almost reporting on a historical reality through his body and his voice.
And that desire for authenticity is, of course, what catapulted him onto the global map in 2015, landing the role of Pablo Escobar in Narcos. And here's that first nugget of dedication. We're not talking about a simple performance. To nail that role, he had to learn Spanish specifically with that distinct Paisa accent from Medellin.
And he gained 40 pounds.
He gained 40 pounds to physically become the man. That intense transformation, that was his global declaration of commitment.
And it's so crucial to understand that commitment because it's the very same discipline he channels into his political cinema. The focus just shifts from external reality.
The weight, the accent.
Right. It shifts to the internal psychological reality of historical struggle.
So before we get into the films, we have to understand this core idea, this theoretical underpinning of his work. Let's define civic memory. It sounds a bit academic.
It does, but it's really the foundation of shared identity. It's fundamental.
But what is it exactly?
Civic memory refers to the shared stories, the collective awareness of historical events that connect a community. It's the basis of its social identity.
So traditions, big historical moments.
Exactly. And societal challenges. It's how a society chooses to remember its past, and often there's a conflict over that memory. But how you remember dictates how you define your present and your future.
And this is where cinema becomes such a potent tool, right? He takes these abstract, maybe dusty historical ideas and makes them feel immediate.
Precisely. Through visual storytelling, films make historical concepts relatable, visceral. It bridges the gap between, say, a history textbook and the lived emotional experience of someone who is actually there.
So the screen becomes this platform.
A platform for cultural transmission, yeah. It ensures key stories, especially ones that have been suppressed or forgotten, stay alive for new generations.
So cinema doesn't just passively record history. It's an active participant.
It's constructing collective memory.
Right. And the sources were very specific on how this works. They detailed 4 key functions. First, there's the straightforward documentary function. Films record actual events. They serve as archives.
And second, you have the powerful interpretive layer. Because, raw facts aren't enough.
No.
Storytelling adds context, meaning a moral framework. It helps you understand why these events matter.
Then there's the third one, which I think is maybe the most vital for Moura's work. Emotional resonance.
Yes.
When you have characters suffering or fighting within a story, you create this personal, empathetic connection. You move beyond just understanding the history.
You start feeling it.
You feel it. And the fourth.
And finally, the fourth is cultural transmission. Cinema passes down values, struggles, triumphs from one generation to the next. It influences how whole societies see their origins. And this is the function Moura is most deliberately engaging with.
Okay, with that framework in place, let's apply it to his work. Specifically, his engagement with Brazil's very troubled past and his focus on the military dictatorship.
The one from 1964 to 1985. Yeah, a great starting point is his role in the secret agent, or o agente secreto.
Right.
This isn't ancient history. Many Brazilians lived through that regime, and the film does so much more than just recreate the setting. It forces audiences to confront the psychological toll of living under state repression.
It sounds like that subtle internal performance is where his power really lies in these roles.
Yeah.
The terror isn't always like a big external threat.
Precisely. By inhabiting a character navigating this pervasive fear, Moura transforms abstract political terms like repression into a visceral emotional reality for the viewer.
He makes it urgent again.
He does. He forces a modern audience to look directly at the scars left by that period, ensuring the memory of the victims is honored and the oppression isn't, sanitized.
And this leads us directly to his directorial debut, a project that put him right in the political crosshairs, Marighella.
In 2019.
A biographical drama about Carlos Marighella, a highly controversial revolutionary who fought the military regime.
A very controversial figure.
And this project was immediately less about film as entertainment and more about film as an act of historical reclamation.
Marighella is the ultimate example of cinema as what we call a contested memory site. This film was deeply provocative because Carlos Marighella is not seen one way in Brazil.
Right. He's a polarizing figure.
Very. For some, he's a communist terrorist who used violence.
Mm-hmm.
For others, he's a freedom fighter, a martyr who resisted a violent dictatorship. So Moura was stepping directly onto a political and historical fault line.
And the political system reacted accordingly.
Oh, they did. Crucially, the sources highlight that the film's domestic release was held up for a long time by Brazil's National Film Agency.
Citing bureaucratic issues, right?
Citing bureaucratic issues that, many critics argued were just thinly veiled political opposition. The government's resistance just underscored how significant the film was. It was challenging the official, state-sanctioned history.
A history that had marginalized or demonized figures of resistance like Marighella.
For decades.
And that's where the power of celebrity becomes a kind of political leverage. Moura, with this global platform from Narcos, was actively challenging those official stories.
He was amplifying voices that had been silenced. He was making sure this painful, contested chapter of history stayed visible, stayed open for debate.
It's a powerful move.
It really is. He basically used his fame to force this conversation back onto the national agenda, the idea that heroes to some are villains to others. This is historical work happening in real time.
So let's shift to the method behind all this.
Nah.
We talked about his total immersion for Narcos, but how does he apply that to the psychological demands of playing a political resistor?
It's a deepening of that same discipline. His prep for a role like Marighella involves not just physical change, but this rigorous immersion into the intellectual and emotional context.
So reading his writings, things like that.
Exactly. He studied the revolutionaries' political writings, the history accounts of what life was like in hiding. This grounding makes sure the performance isn't just dramatic, it's historically accurate and intellectually informed.
And he also integrates some really specific personal disciplines. We hear about meditation and martial arts, and I think a lot of people might just see those as like wellness practices.
Yeah. Right.
But for Moura, how do they translate into conveying historical trauma on screen?
That is the nugget right there. The meditation practices aren't just for his own mental stability. They're tools for emotional regulation and access.
So.
Well, when you're playing a character who has to maintain absolute control in the face of violent oppression, meditation helps you tap into those deeper, often painful emotional states.
And then channel them.
And then channel that internal turmoil with immense focus. You can convey so much defiance through just quiet reserve.
So the stillness itself becomes a form of resistance.
That's it. And the martial arts training does something similar. It enhances his physical presence, gives him this precise economical control over his movements.
Which is vital if you're playing a revolutionary who is constantly under surveillance.
Exactly. Every movement is measured. It creates this powerful, bottled-up intensity. The threat of action is always there, even when the character is completely silent.
He's literally using his body as a canvas for the heavy burden of history. So, beyond the dialogue, how does he convey that trauma visually? What are the subtle cues we should be looking for?
It's all in the nuance. When he's playing characters living under the dictatorship, the performance relies so much less on speech and more on what's unsaid.
You mean like facial expression?
You see it in the subtle facial expressions,
Yeah.
a slight narrowing of the eyes that signals constant fear or suspicion. You see it in the body language, that subtle tenseness in the shoulders. And critically, those long moments of silence.
They're not empty.
They are not empty. They're full of unspoken emotions,
Mm.
fear, defiance, resilience. He uses silence to communicate the stifling atmosphere of authoritarian rule better than any line of dialogue ever could.
Wow, that's powerful. So let's talk about the payoff, the cultural impact of all this work. How does it serve as a mirror for Brazilian identity?
His body of work, especially his directing, acts as a cultural mirror, reflecting Brazil's complexities, its contradictions, its resilience.
Yeah.
It really addresses identity politics and class struggles head on.
And with Mariella, when it finally came out?
When it finally premiered, it wasn't just a movie, it was a national event. It sparked these intense, necessary conversations about history.
So the film basically forced audiences, especially younger generations, to confront what it means to resist.
And to understand suppressed narratives and to debate their own history. Viewers were seeing their own grandparents' struggles or the roots of modern political conflicts reflected truthfully on screen.
That moment of recognition.
That collective conversation is the preservation of civic memory in action.
And his success goes beyond Brazil. I mean, what impact did his international fame, which he ironically got from playing a non-Brazilian drug lord, have on this push for authentic Brazilian culture?
It created this massive, unforeseen global platform. His success from Narcos meant that when he went home to direct Mariella, the world was watching.
So it challenged stereotypes.
It completely challenged the lazy, stereotypical representations of Latin American culture. It ensured that authentic, politically complex stories from Brazil were seen through a local Brazilian lens, not filtered through Hollywood.
That's the bigger insight here. Moura's star power ensures that authentic cultural representation can transcend borders. It promotes a dialogue between, local specificity
And the unique struggles of Brazil.
and these universal human experiences like repression, the fight for freedom, the cost of revolution.
Ultimately, Wagner Moura's film legacy is an intervention. It's not just a reflection. He uses his dual role as an actor and director to give a platform to marginalized voices and contested stories.
And Marielle is the perfect example.
It's the embodiment of this entire philosophy, an intentional, controversial effort to bring a revolutionary figure and a painful history back into Brazil's collective memory, actively challenging decades of erasure.
He leveraged the fame of Escobar to speak for Mariella.
That's a perfect way to put it.
That commitment to authentic, politically charged storytelling, no matter the personal cost, really sets an essential example for artists everywhere. And for you, the listener, as you engage with media every day, we want to leave you with a provocative thought. If cinema is such an essential active tool for preserving civic memory and shaping our social consciousness, what responsibility does your current popular media hold? What is it doing to preserve or challenge the historical narratives of your own community?
Are they helping you remember or helping you forget?
Something to consider next time you're watching a historical drama.
Definitely.
Absolutely. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.